Welcome to Fairy Tale Access, where the head fairy's quest is to prove that fairy tales do exist in actual time rather than once upon a time. Together, we will unravel the heroes, young and old, who turn dreams into reality. These are the people who still believe in happily ever after. The discoveries will bend even our most cynical non-believers into believing in fairy tales. Hi, welcome to Fairy Tale Access. Today, I'm really excited to introduce you to Jeffrey Bardwell with his epic fantasy adventures that are just a little bit dark, kind of creepy in some places, and twisted. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I think dark and creepy is a pretty good description of what I write.
Yeah, with a little bit of steampunk, and I was surprised there was romance involved, but it was really good. They read really fast. It's like an epic journey. So which one came first? Rotten Magic or The Night's Secret?
Actually, neither of them was really the first. My first book was this one, which is now the second book after Rotten Magic. And then after I published it, I realized that I didn't start the story early enough. So I went back and wrote Rotten Magic.
Oh, wow. So is it one series or is it two?
It's two series. The Mage Conspiracy, the blue book with the night on it, the Night Secret series, is the second series I started after I got the first series going, because when I get an idea, I gotta start writing it.
That's great. Can you give me some inside information about the Night Secret? That was a great spin. And I really like how your fantasy stays away from like the grim dark, but you have your own set of dark, really dark marks throughout the book.
Yeah, I'm never quite sure what to call it, because it's not really grim dark, which is evil things happening to evil people. Apparently there's a whole metric of this. So I guess my stuff would be more noble dark. Bad things happening to decent people who are trying to just make their own way in a world that keeps giving them the middle finger.
Yeah. I love the way that the characters play out. Can you tell us a little bit about the characters in The Night Secret first, and then we'll go on to Rotten Magic?
Certainly. The Night Secret is all about a young woman named Kelsa, who is grew up in a period of turmoil in a place called the Iron Empire, where the political and social climate is starting to turn against the mages in the empire, who kind of had a place of high status, but as the machines are coming into vogue, their place is eroding. And I swear it's much more fascinating than I'm making it sound. And she basically has to go on a quest to save her mother, who she just finds out is a mage. And the secret is so volatile, her mother's been keeping it from everyone. And she has to disguise herself as her grandfather. I was telling this to a friend of mine the other night. She said, "Oh, so you're rewriting Mulan?" I said, "Not quite. She does have to infiltrate a regiment, but it is a magical disguise. So she's not putting on a mask or binding her hair back in her breasts or anything. She's actually physically, mentally, and emotionally becoming a man. And that kind of plays havoc with her mission, because she has to get used to the disguise and wear it."
Definitely.
And so that series is about her
that was
initially trying to rescue her mother, and then deciding to try to rescue all the mages and her trials and tribulations.
That particular piece was really played out. because it was the role of becoming somebody else. So not only somebody else, but from a female to a male, dealing with all those relationships that were already built that you just have to kind of blend into, like being a spy, and then just overcoming all these obstacles along the way. I loved it. I loved the dungeon scenes. I loved how all of that action, and it was really incredible. It kept me up forever, but it was so worth it. And tell me about Rotten Magic.
Rotten Magic is from a slightly different angle. If the Mage Conspiracy and the Night Secret is fantasy romance, Rotten Magic is basically a coming-of-age story. I like to compare it to Harry Potter, except being a wizard is a bad thing, and they kill you for it. And so that's kind of incidental to the plot. The main plot is the young man called Devin wanting to be the best artificer in a land full of steampunk. And him being a mage is actually the metaphorical albatross around his neck, because it's kind of like he's running for political office or something, and this is the secret that could drag him down. At the same time, he kind of craves power, and magic is a very good source of that. So he's in a bit of a conundrum.
Yeah. I love the fight scenes, the way he stood up to his bullies. I love the whole dragon persona and how it played into it. So what's your background to come up with these crazy, interesting stories that just keep people up late into the night?
My background is I started out as a poet. So a lot of people have commented on the lyrical nature of my prose. That's because I didn't start out writing short stories like so many novelists did before me. I started out writing sonnets, which are a little more prosy and lyrical. So yeah, I like to leave that stuff in. Profession-wise, I used to be an ecologist. So there's a scene where Devin is defending his invention in front of all his peers and mentors, which is straight out of my graduate school experiences. One of the most traumatic things I've ever went through, so I thought it'd make good novel fodder.
Oh, definitely. So tell me about being an ecologist. What's involved?
It's fun. It's kind of like a jack of all trades occupation. There's part of it where you're going out into the field, into the mud and the swamps and doing survey work. And then there's a part where you're sitting in an ivory tower and doing research and defending your research and constructing models. So I liked it because it kind of was a mix of everything. I never wanted to be much of a specialist, so ecology seemed the right way to go.
Wow. I can see how that plays into the stories.
Yes. I really enjoyed the ecology of dragons bit that I got to get into in the Artifice Mage saga. No one really hits the high points of what it would be like to grow up in a world with dragons if you're not human.
So have dragons ever really existed besides is it the kimono dragon?
Yes, in Rotten Magic, I kind of like to build up to the dragons, so you don't really see them in the first book. You see hints of them, and you see, of course, Devin's utter infatuation with them. But if you keep going in the series, they actually do make a physical appearance after I build them up a little bit more, because they're awesome like that.
Definitely. Well, I actually think the dragon persona played a big part in Rotten Magic.
Rotten Magic is basically him falling into the deepest, darkest pit imaginable. And the rest of the series is him climbing out of that pit that, let's be honest, aside from the betrayal, he kind of dove down into it.
Wow. And how many books have you written altogether now?
Altogether, I've written 3 books in the Artifice Mage saga. I've written 3 books in the Mage Conspiracy series and one prequel. I've written one compilation of short stories. So I believe if you tot all that together, 9. I've written 9 books so far.
9? Over what period of time?
I started in April 2017, so about 2.5 years now.
9 in 2.5 years? Are they all this thick?
Not quite. Broken Wizards is probably my thickest, and it's a toss-up whether the compilation and Night Secret are my thinnest. I was definitely going for epic size for this one. If I was writing it today, it would be slimmed down a little bit, but I try to shoot for about 90,000 to 120,000 words for my novels, so they're all respectable size.
They are definitely a respectable size. And they're so fun to read. So how did you manage to do it? Do you work full time as an ecologist now, or are you more full time as an author?
I've bounced around a bit the last few years. I used to work full time as an ecologist and taught at a small university. Then I decided to write full time for the last year and a half or so. I didn't quite push out the number of books in that time I wanted to. So I went searching around for another occupation. And now I work as a technical writer slash project coordinator. And the books have been kind of pushed back to part-time. But I hope to finish the 4th book in the Mage Conspiracy by the end of the year. So that'll bring me up to an even 10.
Wow, that is a tough schedule to keep. But I imagine your fans are just waiting for the next book in each of these series as much as I am, because they're so good and they're so much fun to read. Like, where do you get that element of fun?
Part of me is self-aware when I'm writing these that they can get a little dark. So I like to interject a lot of humor and self-awareness into characters who, in real life would kind of question their circumstances and sometimes the absurdity of it all.
Definitely notice that. And I like the way that you draw out those individual storylines, because some of them made me laugh out loud. They're hysterical, but they were just like real people would react to situations or be involved, and it was really good. So what kind of advice would you give young writers?
The advice I would give young writers is to never give up, never surrender. Oh, sorry, wrong genre. I would tell them to write about people first and place them in the genres that they want to write in, rather than trying to hit all the tropes in the genres that they're trying to write in.
Mm-hmm.
Because I read a lot of stories that are chock full of tropes and cliches, which are nice until it gets predictable to the point where the characters are acting like characters instead of actual people. And when everyone becomes a caricature, it's just kind of sucks all the life out of the story. So that would be my first bit of advice, to write about real people, or as real people as you can imagine.
What about landscapes and buildings? Because you did a really good job with drawing that into the storyline without going through so much description. So it was really easy to place yourself in the scenes. Are there certain areas of the world that you've traveled with that were model for what you wrote about?
That varies. I have done a lot of traveling around the United States, South America, and Europe. I try not to directly pull from places and cultures. I've been to, just because I don't want to appropriate anything. But yes, I can definitely say there are some places that I've used for inspiration to make certain settings, and I've been very conscientious not to bog myself down in too much description, because that's another impression I got growing up reading fantasy, is that sometimes authors tend to fall in love with their own voices, and I do not exclude myself from that. So sometimes when I'm describing something, I have to remind myself not to give someone reams and reams of pages of loving description, because I really, really want to, but I hold myself back from that. I try to.
You did a great job. It was wonderful the way that you gave us just enough so that our imaginations completely fell into creating the scene ourselves. I think it's similar to the way she wrote Harry Potter. There wasn't tons of descriptions about the castle, but because it was a castle, you could imagine the cobblestone streets, the thick walls, the different things going on and how it was guarded. And I think you weave that in exactly the same way. You just gave us enough that I think I and many of your other readers may have seen the same thing. It was really well done.
Thank you.
Creative. So tell me more. What's next?
What's next? I need to finish my 2 series. So The Mage Conspiracy still has 2 novels left, book 4 and book 5. I'm halfway through book 4. The Artificial Mage Saga still has 3 main novels left. I've got the outline for book 4, and then I need to wrap up the series and write the novella prequel. After that, I've got 2 more series planned. One is going to be a straight fantasy romance having to do with the man who decides to found the Iron Empire and the woman who gets behind him and pushes. And the other series takes place after the events of Devon's story in the Artificial Mage Saga, which I haven't finished writing yet, in which dragons are ravaging the land, and there's a special squad of soldiers who are whistled up to go around hunting them in their steampunk armor and their spears. And that is kind of like my love story to every military science fiction series I've ever read. So I like to mix up the genres a bit, but within each series, the genre is fairly specific, but it's still all one universe.
Yes, I think it's definitely that way. How do you keep track? Like, how do you separate? Do you have like maps on your walls, character list?
Yes, it is. In the back of all of my books, I have glossaries.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I have character compendiums. And say that those are for the readers, and I have had readers actually avail themselves of them. They're really for me, so I can keep track of everything. So yes, I include, they call them world Bibles in the back of each of my books. And I try to make each series distinct enough that each world Bible for each series is different enough that I can keep track of it. Like in the case of Devon's story versus Kelsa's story, The Knight and the Dragon, they take place about 200 years apart. So the social dynamic is different. The slang is different. The characters obviously are different, and the society is different, even though they take place, in this case, in the same country. So there are enough differences that you can keep the split fair enough in your mind.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. But I'm happy to say I never had to reference the character list or the glossary. It was really easy to just flow through the whole series. But why do you use, so for chapters, what was really different, and it's the same in both, why do you always use years? Does that help you?
It helps me keep track of things when they bounce around, and hopefully the readers, because a lot of times I have 2 or 3 stories moving in parallel that are kind of interweaving and coming together. And a lot of times they take place not only at different years, but at different paces. And so that's to help people keep track of when things are going on when you're bouncing around the timeline.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea. Now I get it. I was just wondering. So, what were your favorite
Sure,
books?
sure.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no. I actually had someone review The Knight's Secret twice because the current version is the second version of that book. I did that with Rotten Magic too, actually. I was never quite happy with the first versions of the first books in my series, so they had some rewrites. And apparently the years are so ubiquitous that she hadn't noticed that one series took place 200 years before the other one. And she said she was excited to look at the origin of a lot of the institutions that were in Rotten Magic that are just getting started at the time of The Knight's Secret. So there's a connectivity between them besides just the years.
Ooh, that is a good twist. What type of books did you read growing up?
Um, ran the gamut of everything that's in my books. I read a lot of fantasy, a lot of science fiction. Doyle, Tolkien, Heinlein were some of my favorites. I'm kind of catching up on the romance. Didn't read a lot of that growing up, but I'm trying to get into it a little bit more, that I'm incorporating romance into my own stories, see how other people do it. Gabaldon in the Outlander series is the only one that's coming to mind immediately. I definitely would not have read that as a teenager.
Well, if you haven't read a lot of romance, that's pretty amazing because I've heard writers say you have to read what you're going to write about a lot before, and the romance is really well played out.
Thank you.
Personal
Um,
experiences.
yes, personal experience and I guess a natural honed sense of empathy. Um, I know what my characters would feel at the time, so it's easy to interject their emotions into the scenes. I think my favorite scene personally from The Knight's Secret, if I'm not giving away too many secrets, is the main character, Kelsa, who is a young woman in the body and mind of an old man, runs into his old flame and they strike their relationship up again. And she feels bad for the woman for multiple reasons, which I'm not getting into for spoilers, and decides to give her one perfect night and makes love her as she knows a woman would want to make love to, because she's been on the receiving end of the wrong way all of her life. So if she gets one chance, damn it, she's going to do it right. And she does, I think. I hope.
Yeah, no, that scene was really well played out. Like, surprising. Like, first you're like, oh, wait, this is so not right. Wait. And then it was like, I get it. Oh, and it plays out really well. And it's a whole up and down of emotions that you drag us through, which just made it really more entertaining to read because we couldn't wait to get to the very last page. So thank you for sharing so much about what you do and how you craft these amazing stories. We're looking forward to seeing more. And until next time, keep asking questions. And if you're looking for an exciting series to read, either Rotten Magic or The Night's Secrets will keep you entertained long after. We'll see you soon.